Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Stop Shitting on Yourself. I am Jessica.
And I'm Jamie. How's your week been, Jessica?
It's been okay. This week I sort of fell into a YouTube hole. Is that what you call it?
A YouTube hole. That sounds really odd, to be honest. Maybe don't they say you fell down a rabbit hole or something like that?
Yeah, but it's like the YouTube rabbit hole
Okay.
of like you watch one
Okay.
featured video and then you just gets into this spiral of videos.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Okay.
Yeah. I started watching a bunch of just interviews of different celebrities, and I came
Mhm.
across this video, which I'll share this with you after, but
Okay.
it's with Lana Condor. So she is the women lead in the show To All the Boys I've Loved Before on Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and in the video, she talked about having body dysmorphia ever since she
Okay.
was a kid. And so I'll kind of summarize the video for you. So
Yeah,
she
please
kind of talks
do.
about growing up. She was in ballet,
Mm-hmm.
and as a ballet dancer, you're just looking at yourself in the mirror every single day. You're judging
Mm.
every single movement, every expression.
Uh-huh.
And so she grew up just really criticizing herself and her looks. And
Oh.
she actually, after she quit ballet, was when she started feeling like, oh, she can breathe again because she's no
Oh.
longer, always just looking at herself 24/7. But
Yeah.
obviously, it's hard being a celebrity. But I feel like, as a celebrity, it's hard. But as just someone growing up, I've constantly battled that. Just
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I don't look good enough. I feel like I'm not this. I feel like I'm not that. And just before we get into this, I did look up the definition of body dysmorphia.
Yeah.
And so thank you, Google, once again.
Because Google's always right.
Exactly. So, according to Google, body dysmorphia is a mental illness involving obsessive focus on a perceived flaw in
Oh,
appearance. So, it might not be an actual flaw, it could just be a perceived flaw by yourself.
okay.
And it is a flaw that may be minor or imagined, and that person may spend hours a day trying to fix it. So
Okay.
I'm not saying that I have body dysmorphia. I'm not saying we do either, but
Mhm.
I feel like we've all spent hours, probably many hours of our
Yeah,
lives just obsessing parts of our body, whether it's real or
absolutely.
imagined. Yeah, so I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that. Like, when did you first started realizing that you maybe have an obsession with a specific part of your body, or was it like a thing or something happened in your life?
I mean, I would probably say that it goes back to my childhood,
Oh, okay.
probably ever since I was maybe in middle school or high
Mm.
school. I mean, there are a lot of things that started when I was in elementary school even,
Mhm.
but the one thing that comes to mind for me would be um, a lot of my family members saying you gained weight, or if you were just a little bit skinnier, you would look prettier
Mhm.
in this outfit.
Oh my gosh.
And yeah, and the thing is, I was never fat
Mhm.
in middle school or high school. Like the body that I had would not be considered fat. It would not be considered overweight. It would
Mhm.
not be considered any of those things. And yet,
Mm.
my family members, and it wasn't even my parents. My parents have
Mhm.
never said anything about my body in that way
Mhm.
ever. It was more of my brother and his
Oh.
partner at the time
Mhm.
and my aunt. And they were the ones who kept telling me, like, you might want to lose a little bit of weight in order
Oh
to
my
look
god.
prettier. Yeah.
And you were
So
just
that was,
in middle school?
yeah, in middle school. And
Wow.
so all throughout middle school and high school, I thought
Mhm.
I was fat. I thought I was overweight. Looking
Wow.
back now, I know that wasn't
Mhm.
the case, but I had this obsession of wanting to lose weight and wanting to look a certain way, especially
Mhm.
because at that age, I was watching a lot of Asian TV. And
Oh,
as
no.
you know, Jessica, like if you grew up watching a lot of Asian TV, they talk about weight a lot. And
Yeah.
it's almost praised if you are super skinny, pretty much,
Mhm, mhm.
right?
Yep.
And they'll they as in the celebrities will reveal secrets of how they lost the weight. And a
Mm.
lot of the trending things back then were like one food diets.
Oh,
And
yeah, yeah.
one food diets are basically you are basically when you eat one kind of food for 3 days or so. So
Mm.
for example, in high school, I was so concerned about my weight and looking a certain way and trying to be skinny
Mhm.
that I ate just tomatoes for 3 days.
Oh
Only
my
tomatoes.
god.
Yep. Only tomatoes.
Wow.
They weren't even cooked. They were raw tomatoes and
Mhm.
it was just for 3 days. And after that, I had like white rice porridge because you need to get your body used to actual food again, I guess you can say.
Mm.
So that's how I don't know, that's how obsessed I was about
Mhm.
being skinny and losing weight because other people told me that I wasn't skinny enough for their beauty
Mm.
standards. And then I start to believe that because they were the people who mattered in my life.
Yeah, yeah.
So it started as young as, I mean, there are other things that go way back, but that
Yeah.
part, it goes way back to like middle school and high school. What about you? Have you ever experienced that with your family?
That's so crazy. I mean, 100% I have.
Mm,
I think I wanna I think it's partly because of the Asian culture.
yeah.
Um, and I don't know what it is. I've definitely talked to my family members about this because I
Hmm.
at one point I was just so fed up with them telling me that I've gained weight. And I had to
Yeah.
tell them like this is not nice and it's not caring. So why do you tell people that? And for
Right.
them it's either like, oh, it's just an offhanded comment. It's truth, right? So why can't we say something that's true? So on
Okay.
one hand, I've heard that, and then on the other hand, I've heard like, "Oh, I would only tell you because I care about you
Mm,
and I want you to look good, so that's why I'm telling you."
mhm.
And my response to them is, "Well, I don't feel either. I don't feel loved. And even if
Right.
yes, I have gained weight, there's probably 20 other ways that you can say it other than, "Oh my god, it looks like you've gained weight."
Absolutely. And I think
Yeah.
that is like an Asian culture thing too. And I know this might happen in other cultures too, but because I
Mhm.
grew up in an Asian household, I can only speak about that. But
Mhm.
in the Asian culture, there's such an emphasis on looking a certain way
Oh, yeah.
because I mean, if you go to Asian countries too, like they do fat shame a lot, right?
Mm, mhm,
Because
mhm.
to them it's more about like health, like you shouldn't be overweight, you shouldn't be past a certain like weight limit, I guess, in their
Yeah.
eyes, or else
Mhm.
you're unhealthy and it causes internal problems. And
Yeah.
that's how I guess the society there runs. And so if you have family members who are still kind of
Mhm.
embracing that side of the culture, they will say
Yeah.
those things to you without understanding how toxic it
Mhm.
is. It is so
Yeah.
toxic for a child to be hearing you're not good enough because of the way I think you should look.
Exactly, exactly. And you're telling a kid this where they're still growing and they're still,
Yeah.
trying, they're still like they're playing sports and they're eating and they're growing and
Hmm.
they're just trying to be healthy. And now you come and tell them again and again that they've gained weight. It's so toxic. What is a kid supposed to do?
Right.
But going back to your question, I actually didn't start getting all those comments until
Hmm.
probably when I was in like college. Because
Really.
growing up, I was a definitely a skinnier kid. And I
Hmm.
was now looking at me, I'm 5'8", so I'm pretty tall.
Oh,
Um,
dang. You're 5'8". I mean,
I'm
I
five,
knew you were tall, but dang, you're 5'8".
yeah, I'm 5'8", so
Oh,
I'm pretty tall. I'm pretty tall for an Asian,
yeah,
actually.
absolutely.
Um, but I wasn't always this tall. I like hit my growth spurt, I think, around like sophomore, junior year of high school. So I hit my growth spurt pretty late. So all throughout
Oh.
my like middle school and partially into high school, I was a pretty petite kid.
Mm.
And I was very active. I was like swimming, I was, doing a bunch of sports. So I was
Yeah.
always pretty active. And so growing up, I've always been pretty lanky. And
Okay.
when I hit my growth spurt, I just shot up like from, I don't know, like 5'2", 5'3" to like 5'5" in 2 or 3
No
years. Yeah, yeah,
way.
yeah. It was, I don't even know how it happened, honestly. It just happened.
Dang.
Yeah.
Dang.
Um, and I always say that like my width never caught up with my height when I was in high school, so I was just really
Yeah.
lanky as a kid. Um, and I ate a lot, but I was really active, so, I
Mhm.
didn't actually start feeling like had gained weight or anything until college hit, and,
Mm.
I moved out of home. I, started eating just whatever I wanted. I stopped
Right.
exercising as much. And so the first time that I heard those words, like "you gained
Mhm.
weight," was
Yeah.
after I graduated from college.
Oh my
So
gosh.
yeah, it was very, very late. And I remember I had gone home to Asia. I was visiting my family, and
Mhm.
it was kind of one of those things where after one person says it, you're kind of like, "Oh yeah, haha," like that's kind of funny. But then you hear people,
Mm.
everybody who's now seeing you for the first time after X amount of years, they all say like, "Oh, Jess, it looks like you gained a little bit of weight, or it looks like you put on some
Oh
weight."
man.
And it was just one family member after another, and it just slowly hits you like, "I guess I had." And then I think it really, really hit me when, our family were all going out to dinner,
Yeah.
and, everyone, came over to our house, and we were just all getting ready.
Okay.
And I had came out with what I thought was just the super cute outfit. And my mom like pulled me aside and was like, "Oh, like I think you should change out of those pants." And
Why?
I was like, "Why?" And she's like, "Oh, those pants makes you look a little, a little fat."
No.
And yeah, at that point, I had totally lost it because, I've been hearing this my whole entire trip.
Wow.
Like everyone's like, "Oh, it looks like you've gained weight, blah, blah, blah." And then to have my
Right.
mom tell me to go change,
Mm.
um, I totally lost it. I was like, "You know what? If you don't like the way I look, then fine. Like I'm not gonna go celebrate with you. I can't believe you're ashamed of how I looked." And all these things. We had a huge fight because of that. The more they try to say it, the more it came off as like a personal attack for me. And I think in the Asian culture, they just don't understand how that's potentially hurtful to a kid. Um, and the all the other family members just kind of chimed in, and it just became a whole thing. And that was the first time that I really felt like, oh my God, like this is so toxic to a
Right.
kid. And at that time I was 21, but I was
Yeah.
still just like, I'm sure I already at the time wasn't feeling comfortable with myself. And then on top of that, right, that whole situation happened with my family. And I just became so obsessed from that point on with my weight. I've definitely tried all the fad diets that you were talking about, right? Whether it's like only
Yeah.
eating one meal, or like only
Yeah.
eating like a vegetable for breakfast, lunch, and
Right.
skipping a meal, and all those things is so unhealthy.
Mhm.
Um, and it's a constant battle, even now.
Yeah, that's so
Many
true.
years
It's
later.
especially when you grow up not having to exercise and it's in your genetics where you're not completely obese and you don't have to like work out in order to maintain a certain figure. And then all of a sudden, when you grow older and your metabolism slows down and things catch up with you, right? And
Oh
you're
my
not as
gosh, yeah.
active and it
Mhm.
hits, then you're more concerned. And at that point, you're wondering, what do I do? What do I do in order to
Yeah.
lose this weight? Because everyone around me, especially the people that I care about, are telling me that I gained weight.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
it's this pressure of needing to look a certain way because of the way other people want you to look or perceive what obese is or overweight is. And it really shouldn't matter. But at the same time, let's be real, it does affect the way that we perceive ourselves and it affects our self confidence. um, as well. And I think as a kid, especially when you're hearing that, it changes your whole life, you know? It really
Totally,
does.
totally.
I'm not even being dramatic. It really does
Mhm.
because we're so like self-conscious of ourselves as a kid that if somebody comments on the way that we look or the way that we should be looking in the society according to whoever's beauty standards, we become so obsessed with that and we want to change that about ourselves. And it's so toxic. It really is for other people to be pointing that out and saying, you're not good enough, basically,
Yeah,
is the message
exactly.
that they're sending you or sending the kid. So
Mhm.
things that we have to unlearn because we've learned that from, our older generations.
Mhm.
I feel like we need to unlearn that and we need to heal from that so that when we
Totally.
do ever have come into contact with little children, we don't do the same thing, you know?
Yeah, it's true because I feel like even now, like as toxic as that culture is, I don't think the older generation or our parents' generation or our grandparents' generation, the aunties and the uncles, like I don't think they see it as a negative comment. Like it's
Mhm.
not coming from a bad place in their heart, right? They're
No, it's
not
not.
making fun of you. They're not like I don't think it's coming from a bad place
It's not.
at
It's just
all.
they just don't understand how traumatic it can be to the person who
Right, right.
hears it. The intentions are good, right? Like they mean well. When our older generation tells you, hey, you gained weight, they notice
Yeah,
little
yeah.
changes about you and they're mentioning and they're concerned about your health and they're trying to get you to a better place. But once again, it sends a message that is hurtful, that is traumatizing, and it can lead to, it can lead to eating disorders too, and like body
Mhm.
dysmorphia as well.
Yeah.
And when the adults do that, the kids learn that type of behavior and they bully other kids for whatever they think is the beauty standard too. So, for
Oh my
example,
gosh,
Jessica,
yeah.
as a kid, how many times were you bullied because not just because of maybe your weight, but because of whether your body was developed or not at a certain
Oh my
point in your
gosh,
age, right?
yes. Yes. So
Yeah.
true. So
Yeah.
true. So, as I was saying earlier, I didn't really grow into my height and my body until much later in my high school, college life. And at that point, I feel like a lot of my peers, they've already started growing and developing, particularly in their chest area.
Okay. Okay.
And I mean, even now, I'm relatively flat chested and I own it now. I don't
Okay.
mind it. If
Okay,
anything,
girl,
it's
own
just
it. Yes.
exactly. It's just easier with my life, right? But
Mhm.
growing up, oh my God, I had some like I call them friends, but they're not friends when like boys point out that you're flat chested. It was
Wow.
so mean and I was so hurt. And there was this phrase in Chinese. It
Mhm.
essentially means you're an airport runway. So airport runways are really flat and they're like nice and smooth. So that's
Oh
what they
my
used to call like
God.
flat-chested girls, and I definitely been called that all throughout high school.
Wow. So if being called flat chested was not enough, they just like stepped it up and said, you're an airplane runway. That is
Yeah.
terrible.
Right. Yeah. Oh my God. Little
Wow.
kids are so mean. Kids are
They
so mean.
are. But like the thing about it is like that's learned behavior, right? But kids are just
Mhm.
much more blunt about it. And
Yeah.
it hurts and it stings so much more when it comes from your
Mhm.
peers, especially when they comment on something that we kind of use to define our femininity, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
boobs are basically a trait of women,
Mhm.
right? And if we don't have it, then it's like we don't do we feel like women, you know what I mean? Like as a kid, we're like, I'm not a woman yet, I'm not grown. Like I'm a
Yeah,
girl, not
yeah.
yet a woman, right? Like because I don't have
Yeah.
my boobs yet. So
Mhm.
for somebody to comment on that and bully you
Yeah.
about it is just so terrible. It's just so terrible.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I definitely have come to terms with it, like, they're not growing, and that's okay.
Yes, girl, you know what? Yes, girl. You just got to embrace your
Yeah,
size. Like
exactly.
boobs come in all shapes and sizes, and you just got to embrace it.
Yeah, exactly, yeah, but I mean,
Yeah.
that hurt. growing up. I mean, in college and in high school, it definitely hurts,
Absolutely.
but I yeah, kids are mean.
Kids are so mean. I remember back in the day in elementary school, and this is why I
Mhm.
say like this whole thing about other people perceiving you a certain way and beauty standards, all of that stuff, that started when I was like a kid, like a little tiny kid, right? So in
Oh.
elementary school, I used to get teased because I have big cheeks. Like
Oh.
big cheeks come through so so these big cheeks, right? These
Mhm.
like chubby cheeks, they're all genetics. My
Oh, yeah,
mom,
I have chubby cheeks.
yeah, like my mom has like chubby cheeks, but that's what keeps her looking young,
Oh,
even
yeah.
at this
Yeah,
age, right? Because it's
yeah.
like not only does she have like her cheeks, but they're
Mhm.
tight, like her skin is tight, right? So she looks younger than she is, right?
Yeah, oh my
And
gosh. Gonna need her recipe on, like, staying young.
on skincare, she doesn't have any, girl. Like it's just
Oh,
genetics. Like
oh, man.
literally, it is just genetics for her. And I envy that. Even though I'm her
Mhm.
daughter, I didn't get her full, uh genetics with the skin. But I did get the cheeks.
Mm.
And as a kid, I was teased for it. I was called names for it. And I used to
Oh my
hate them.
god.
And in high school, even though my body was skinny, though I
Mhm.
thought I was overweight because everyone told me I was,
Yeah.
though my body was skinny, my cheeks were so like big and poofy, kind of like chipmunks,
That's
that like,
adorable.
well, not when I was going through all that bullying for it. It
Mm,
wasn't adorable for me and I hated
right.
them. And it wasn't until like my mid 20s, maybe, that I
Mhm.
actually lost some of the cheeks. Like I still have my cheeks. I
Mhm.
will never have like super defined like bone structures, right? That's just not
Yeah.
how I am
Yeah.
genetically. But these cheeks were much poofier. Even in my early to like mid 20s.
Yeah.
So it took a
Mm.
while, but I used to get bullied for that too because kids are so
That's
mean,
horrible.
right?
Yeah. I'm
Yeah,
so sorry you
because
had to go through that.
but
I
it's
mean,
all good. I mean, it's all good now, right? But I understand that kids are so mean, but they learn that type of criticizing behavior from the adults in their lives too. I mean, or other adults. Like it doesn't always have to be their parents, it could be other adults pinpointing things that are wrong about them. And they're like, oh, let me shame another person for how they look, something that they can't change at the moment
exactly.
because
Exactly.
I don't know what.
Like, these are all just born like, these are my God-given features, like, I can't change them, but it's so sad that as kids, like, you learn to fixate on things, and I feel like, kinda like what you said earlier, right? It really starts from when someone that you care about, whether it's a family member or your closest friends, say something, and you just kinda start, like, fixating on something that, again, you can't change. And I don't know about you, but I've definitely thought about plastic surgery so many times
Mm-hmm.
in my past. And I mean, I thought about changing my eyes, my nose, because I didn't have a tall enough nose. I didn't have, like what everybody thought was like the beautiful, deep set, like double eyelid type of eyes. I didn't have the chiseled cheekbones. I didn't have like the nice, like chiseled jawline, like, oh my God, everything about my face I hated.
And everything that you're talking about right now is all like Eurocentric beauty standards
Yeah.
that
Mhm.
a lot of times in Asian countries we really want. And
Mhm,
so
mhm.
you'll see that in like Korean and Japan. I mean, their plastic surgeons are like top notch, man. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, you got to give it to them though. Like, knowing where they were 50, 60 years ago
Mhm,
as a
mhm.
country and then seeing their come up now, like, dang, that's a
Yeah.
come up. But at the same time, they go through so much plastic surgery so that they can have these Eurocentric body features, facial features, not even body, facial features, right? Like the high, tall nose bridge. That was a big one. That's what a lot of celebrities get plastic surgery for, guys
Right,
and
right.
girls, right?
Mhm.
Because typically, quote unquote, and not all, because, there are Asians that are an exception to this. But typically, like, Asians have a lower nose bridge than people with Eurocentric facial features, right? Many other cultures and I guess ethnicities and races have that double eyelid.
Mhm.
A lot of Asian people don't. And that's why we have the monolids,
Yep.
right? And our eye shapes are a little bit different as well.
Mhm.
So growing up, you're right. There were a lot of celebrities that were getting plastic surgery done to have those Eurocentric body features.
Mhm. Yep.
And seeing that on TV and knowing that that was the standard of beauty,
Mhm.
I also felt pressure to get plastic surgery and to do certain things to make my nose bridge higher or to get those double eyelids.
Mm.
Like,
Mhm.
um, for example, like the nose bridge thing,
Mhm.
that was a huge one for me when I was growing up because some
Mm.
of my friends who are Asian actually had a really high nose bridge. And you and I know growing up, that was something that like we all strived for, right? Like we can't
Yeah.
fix that about ourselves, but we wanted that
Mhm.
like small petite nose and like the high
Yes.
nose bridge, right? And so in high school, I would research how to get a higher nose bridge because at that age, I guess
Wow, okay.
technically, I don't think this is scientifically correct, but it was
Mhm.
something that was going through the internet at
The
that time.
internet, yeah.
Yes. And they would say that your body is still like moldable, I guess, even
Okay.
even at that age. And so I believed it. And they said,
Yeah.
massage your nose every single night. And you gotta like massage it upwards like this so that your nose bridge becomes higher, which is totally
Oh,
false. Totally
okay.
false. I
Wow.
don't think that works, right? Another thing that we would do is get like a clothespin, those like wooden clothespins, right?
Mhm.
And you just stick it on your nose so that your nose becomes smaller and it shapes your nose. I
Oh
used
my
to do that
god.
every night, no matter how painful it was.
Wow.
Yeah, that's how bad it was. I know. Those like standards of beauty that we strive for. Yikes. So I
Wow.
remember even
Okay.
asking my mom at one point, I said, Mom, how come you never like massage my nose for me as a kid? Because apparently that's what Asian parents do if they want their children to have higher nose bridges. When they're an infant, you massage the nose upwards like this so that they bring the bones or whatever upwards,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
okay. They
And
remold their kid.
pretty much, right? And
Yeah.
my mom was not even surprised. She wasn't even surprised about that at all. She said, that's what a lot of people told me to do when you were born
Mm.
and when your brother was born, but I didn't do it. And I said, why? Why didn't you? Because I would have had a higher nose bridge. Why didn't you do that? And I was almost like resenting her for it at
Oh,
that time. But
yeah.
then she said, well, because there are different side effects that happen and it can actually prevent you from breathing correctly. And like there are
Mhm.
other health side effects that occur when parents massage their baby's nose to make it shaped a certain
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
And so she said she never did that because it wouldn't be healthy for her baby. So I looked at her
Mm.
and I was like, dang it. I don't resent you, but dang it. I was like, dang. But I
Mhm.
get it. I was like, thanks, mom. Now I can like breathe correctly. I don't have
Yeah.
like sinus issues. But that was a huge thing. And that still is a huge thing, I think,
Y
now, even with like having a certain shaped nose,
Mhm. Yeah, totally.
certain shaped eyes, all of that. It's definitely
Mhm.
like still a thing where people still try to get plastic surgery for it, and they do.
Totally, totally. And I'm not here, I can't shame anyone for wanting to change a certain feature if it makes you feel
Yeah,
better, if it makes you feel more confident. It's just I feel like all of us have gone through that phase of just hating ourselves, certain parts of ourselves that,
right.
are representative of our literally our ancestors, right? Our
Yeah.
moms and our dads and then our grandparents and great grandparents, and is just it's such a horrible mindset. And I can't say that I can give you guys any advice because I still go through that
Right.
now. I feel like
Right, right,
every
right.
other day I'm like, "Oh my god, if I laugh this way, if I keep doing this, then I'm gonna get crow's feet or lines or
No.
whatever it is." Um, but it's just crazy that we've had all these like impossible standards that we're trying to live up to now,
Right.
whether it's on Instagram. I feel like it's worse now with Instagram and online influencers, because
Yeah.
they almost feel like they're more reachable. So kids
Mm.
growing up, it's like, oh, like they're just like my friends, so if my friends
Mhm.
can look like that, like I can definitely spend a ton of money and look like that. Whereas
Yeah.
before, I feel like as celebrities, they're slightly less reachable. So even though you strive to look like that, you almost
I
feel like,
see.
oh, okay, there's like an unreachable
Oh, yeah, yeah.
barrier.
Yeah.
But it's either way, it's so unhealthy. And I know we keep saying like the Asian beauty trends, or these like Asian beauty standards, but I
Mhm.
almost feel like regardless of where you grew up, whether it's
Mhm.
here in the States or in Asia or wherever, like it's universal. This
Yeah.
striving for these unattainable beauty standards, and not just beauty standards, just these standards in general, it's universal and it's unattainable.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And like you said, if you get plastic surgery done and you feel happy about that, like by all
Mhm.
means, do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like who cares? Okay? If that's what's going to make you happy
Mhm,
and
mhm,
that's what's going to build up your self-confidence, by all
mhm.
means, who cares? It's your
Yeah.
life, do it. Right? Do what makes you happy. But
Mhm.
I think what we are speaking about is just kind of like the struggles that we go through when when we feel pressured to live up to these beauty standards.
Yeah.
And the most important thing is to like kind of love yourself of who you are too and how you look like,
Yeah.
and not feel so shameful about your facial features that were given to
Mhm.
you through generations and generations. And like you said, it does represent our heritage, it does represent our culture, our peoples, right?
Mhm.
So why do we keep wanting to change that about ourselves because the media says these Eurocentric features are what is beautiful? It isn't.
Yeah.
Like every culture and every ethnicity, every race has something beautiful about them. And we need to appreciate that. And I think we ourselves need to kind of unlearn these toxic things that our older generations have kind of taught us to do, right? And it takes a while. It takes a while for us to unlearn and to heal. But there are so many beautiful things about us and how we look like, and we need to embrace that the same way we embrace like tiny boobs. Like, we have to embrace everything about our bodies. And
Yes,
like,
yeah.
I think speaking of embracing too, nowadays, a lot of people are trying to kind of embrace the natural like features of their body. For
Mm,
example, like
mhm.
body hair, right?
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
Because back in the day, it was a norm where all women had to shave body hair
Oh,
because
yeah.
that was expected. If you had body hair, you're nasty or you're gross or you're unclean or whatever,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
But now I feel like everyone's just kind of embracing that natural beauty, which is awesome and amazing. That now more people are saying, you know what? Screw that. Screw shaving. We don't need to shave, okay, in order to be looked at as feminine or clean or whatever. But that was something that was huge back in the day. I remember feeling the need to shave when I didn't need to. Like my leg hairs were pretty much invisible.
Mm.
They were invisible. You couldn't see them unless there was sunlight on them.
Mm, mhm.
And I didn't have many. But in high school, I had quote unquote friends who were shaming me into shaving. And it wasn't even like it wasn't even the hair that they mentioned. It was more of the act of shaving. Wow, you don't shave? How come you don't shave? Everyone's supposed to shave. And they almost pressured you into doing something. Not almost, because they did. you know, but there's that too. It's like there's a standard of beauty where like you are expected to do something and you're shamed for not doing that as a kid. Is there something else that you feel pressured to, or you felt pressured to do, I guess, as even like an adult, but as a kid too, that was just trending? I don't know, like that somebody pressured you to do.
I don't think there's anything that people pressured me to do per se. But the
Uh-huh.
one thing that it's funny now because I used to hate this part about myself.
Okay.
I used to have freckles, or not used to, I still do. I have freckles.
You used
Um,
to.
um,
Uh-huh.
and I used to hate my freckles. But now, I feel like you see trends, you even see filters that are like freckled filters, and they're not the cute, like 2 dots here type of freckles. Like I have freckles like all over my cheeks. I used to want to cover them. And now I haven't necessarily embraced them yet.
Okay. Okay. I mean, hey,
I
we're still
just
working on it.
I'm still working on myself. But I've learned to not to just want to cover it up as much.
Okay.
Um, but I truly I just that's something that I don't understand that people do. And I know people do a lot of these questionable beauty trends that
Yes.
aren't necessarily kosher, should I say.
Because beauty trends are always changing, beauty standards are always changing, which is
Mhm.
why I want to emphasize that we just need to love our bodies and who we are and how we
Yeah,
look like,
yeah.
because these trends will always change. And
Mhm,
when you're speaking about freckles, you're right. Like, people are obsessed with drawing fake freckles on their cheeks.
mhm.
I'm like, those are like sunspots.
Yeah,
Like, you know that that's skin damage, right? Okay.
yeah,
And that's
yeah.
also genetics too, but like,
Mhm.
that's called skin damage, and you're trying to make that a beauty trend. Let's
Yeah,
not do that.
yeah.
There's also other beauty trends that are, I mean, obviously the big beauty trend right now is lip fillers. And once
Mhm.
again, if you want to do fillers because it makes you feel good, like, do it by all means, whatever. Okay, who cares?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
like, but what I do want to talk about is how certain people, certain groups in this country have been told that their big lips are, um, what would you say, like, unpretty. They're ugly.
Mm,
They look a
mhm.
certain way, and they've been teased for so many years for having big lips. Because why? At a certain point in our time in this whole world, the Eurocentric beauty standard was that like thin lips
Yeah.
was beautiful,
Mhm, mhm.
right? So when I was growing up, I would always get teased for having big, thick lips. And they're not
Mm.
like super thick, right? But like, they're a lot thicker than what usually Asians have, or like
Right,
usually
the
white people
net
have.
beauty standard, yes.
Exactly. And so I was always teased for it. They're like, look at your thick lips. And then they would always mock it too. And I hated that about myself because other
Mhm.
people would point that out.
Mm.
So because I wanted to, be prettier in the eyes of other people at a young age, I would
Mhm.
always take pictures and conceal my lips. Like, if you pucker your lips a certain
Oh.
way,
Mhm, mhm. Yeah,
like
yeah.
that, you pucker it in. And I know those of you who are listening, you can't really see it, but you just pucker your lips and you tuck it in, and it makes
Mhm,
it look really thin, as almost if like your lips aren't even there. And I would
mhm.
usually take pictures like that because that was a beauty trend. And
Mm.
people made it seem like my thicker lips were ugly and that I
Mm.
shouldn't like myself for that. Now I embrace it. At a
Yeah.
certain point, even before this whole like beauty trend happened with like thicker lips and lip fillers happened,
Mhm.
I was at one point, I was like, you know what, screw this. You know what, screw it. Like, screw what other
Yeah.
people say. I don't care anymore. I'm so tired of caring that
Yeah.
like I'm just gonna embrace my thick lips and just put all of that lipstick on there. Put
Mhm.
all of that on there. Let it
Yeah, yeah.
show. Gosh, but definitely there are some trends that like they are questionable, because now it's like, well, now people want to have thicker lips, but other people were teased for it for all their lives, and it's something that they couldn't fix. They were born with thicker
Yeah,
lips.
exactly. Yeah. Like what was I supposed to do as a kid? Like I wouldn't even know the first step of, actually going and making my lips smaller.
Right? It's like, what do I
You
do?
know?
Is there a lip like reduction?
Yeah.
Like, what?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's
Yeah.
so, like, arbitrary, it's someone from somewhere decided that we're gonna put this model on the cover of Vogue, and that's the new beauty standard, and everybody
Right.
else that doesn't fit is just ugly, and they're shamed for it, and they're teased for it,
Yes.
which is just such a terrible place to grow up. I feel like we're definitely better now where we're taught more and more now to love ourselves, to love what we look like, to
Mm,
just love every aspect of who we are.
mhm.
But even then, I feel like it's still tough growing up. It's still tough aging.
It's yeah, I mean, it's tough aging. I feel like it's a tough balance right now because yes, you're right. There are a lot of messages out there saying, "Hey, love yourself, practice self-love and self-care and all of that like, love unicorn rainbow stuff, right? Which is awesome, which you do need to do. You need to heal
Yeah.
yourself and love who you are, right? There's a lot of truth in that. However, I think with our media nowadays, kind of, I don't know, circulating images where it's tough to say, like, hey, love yourself while you're looking at images of models who look a
Mm.
certain way. And
Mhm, mhm,
those images are blasted in front of you as you scroll through any type of social media, right?
mhm.
But with that said, though, I think the whole thing that we want to like really emphasize is to really learn to love yourself. And I know we've
Yeah.
mentioned it before in this podcast where we're still learning to do that fully. And I think that will always be the case
Mhm.
because there's always going to be changes in our lives and changes to our
Totally.
bodies that we
Mhm.
need to learn to embrace. Not always will we embrace it so quickly, but we will need to learn to be like, hey, you know what? That's okay. That's my body. And I
Yeah.
think I've come to a certain point in my life where I know that there are certain things that I do need to change about my body. Like I do need to work out for my health, right? Because
Mhm,
I've been
mhm.
gaining weight through quarantine. Okay. And like this is unhealthy. But at the same time, it's so weird. It's so conflicting because I have enough self-love to say, I'm okay. I'm
Mhm.
okay. Like I don't put myself down for gaining weight. And yet I know I need to do better because I can't keep going on this track of unhealthy eating
Yeah.
and no exercise as well. So it's, kind of learning to navigate around that, you know,
Yeah.
and
Eventually you find a balance, but yeah.
with one thing and then you'll have to find the balance for another thing, you know what I mean? It's a constant like learning I guess learning track.
It
It really
totally
is.
is. It totally is. Yeah, you're so right. Like I'm sure there are certain things I used to fixate on back when, I was in high school or in
Right.
college that I finally learned that, you know what? I love that about myself, or that's what
Yeah.
makes me who I am. And then, 2 days later I'm going to find something else about myself and I'm like, "Oh my god, this is I need help. I need to fix this about myself." And it's just a constant
Yeah.
battle. And just the older I get, I feel like I'm starting to learn that there's just certain things that are very natural to the aging process, as much as I hate that. Um,
Yes. It
it's
is
just
natural. Like
natural and
wrinkles are natural, Jessica, but if
yeah,
you want to get Botox later, you know what? I'm all for it. You know what I mean? I'm like,
exactly.
whatever. Like
Yeah, no, true, true. Like if getting plastic surgery makes you happy and more confident, go do that. If
girl.
doing
Yes.
whatever makes you happy and confident, go do that.
Yeah.
And if the older generation would just stop with the toxic comments, whether
Hmm.
it's, oh, it looks like you gained a couple pounds, or if you would just do this, you would be so much better. It would
Hmm.
at least just make our growing pains a lot shorter and just easier to embrace ourselves.
A little bit more bearable, but also, yeah, absolutely. I think that it is kind of our jobs right now too as an adult to kind of unlearn those toxic traits so that we don't pass it on to future generations.
Totally. Yeah.
We have to like really do a lot of self-evaluation and like self-reflection and unlearn those toxic traits.
Mhm, mhm.
We really do have to do that too.
Yeah, definitely. And we
Yeah.
gotta keep reminding ourselves every single day, just
Mhm.
as much as, we hate this part of ourselves, we have to
But
keep
also
reminding ourselves.
yeah, and also like learn to love and embrace yourself. Like if you want to go out and get some Botox because you see some wrinkles happening, do it. You know what I mean? If that's going to make you happy, then do it. But at the same
Mhm.
time, I think there's a fine line between like doing things that make you happy and then that also causing self-harm
Yeah.
where you don't feel confident even with those alterations. And I think there has to be a point where you do kind of balance that out and you recognize that part about yourself and you kind of take a step back and think, okay,
Mhm.
wait, what am I really doing this for?
Yeah,
Right. But
exactly.
you know what? Honestly, like wrinkles suck, even though it's the natural part of aging. And you know what?
Yes.
I've if you want to do Botox, by all means do it. I'll go with you. You know what I mean?
Yes, yeah. I mean, look, again, this is not an advice podcast, so we basically walked back on some of our work.
I know,
But you know
right? It's
what?
not,
If it makes you happy, why not?
but yeah.
Well, so that's our podcast today.
Yeah. So I know that there's a lot of other beauty standards out there, but we just
Mhm.
specifically talked about the ones for, I guess, women because that's what we can relate to. So
Yep.
if you feel like, hey, you know what, there's some other beauty standards that you all just haven't covered, write it in the comments and let us know. Like
Yes.
share what are some I guess I don't know, traumas that you've been through because somebody else told you you weren't good enough. You know, like
Exactly, yeah.
let's share some traumas and kind of help each other through that, you know? So let us know in the comments, what are some beauty standards or trends that you've personally experienced that you would like to share with us? Anyway, we'll see you all next week.